Don't you think it's time for the city of Savannah to have an honest tourism management plan? That SCAD start paying its fair share? And the hospitality industry needs to increase its wages? The impacts of new growth should not cost residents. All local elected officials on council and commission should have term limits. We're working hard to accomplish these policies. We need your help. Please contribute whatever you can, $5, $10, or $20, by going to bettersavannah.org. Donate. Thank you.
Savannah needs additional tourism. Savannah needs additional tourism.
I mean, I appreciate our tourism community. I appreciate our hoteliers in particular. I'm not exactly sure about what it is. I'm not exactly sure why it is. But there has been a proliferation of homeless people, roofless neighbors in our streets, in our squares, throughout our community.
The following show and broadcast is a production of Better Savannah, an independent expenditure committee dedicated to better policy outcomes at the state and local level. The views, opinions, and statements made by the hosts and/or their guests do not necessarily reflect the views of Better Savannah.
John,
Chuck,
how you doing, pal?
good. I'm still pushing.
I know it. I'm pushing out, baby. Welcome, guys. We are back for episode number 101. It's Thursday, October 20th. We're right at 19 days away from the midterm elections in November. There is a lot to be hopeful for right now. This is our first show back since several debates. Of course, we hosted the U.S. Senate debate here. There was a gubernatorial debate. There's been a lot of appearances. And, of course, polling has shown, not an incredible interest, from a lot of Democratic leaning or supposedly Democratic voters. And the early voting numbers so far just really do not bear that out. So, before we get to, our main show, I just want to stop and really just thank everybody that came out to our 100th show recording a week ago last Monday. It was at the Front Porch Improv Theater, 210 West Victory Drive. Thank you to Bree, Danger, everybody at the works there for being such excellent hosts. Just a little bit over 50 people were able to watch our live recording where you and I kind of riffed for 40 minutes or so, 45 minutes or so. And then we had Senator Lester Jackson and Alderwoman Kesha Gibson-Carter live on a panel for the back 45-minute half of the show. So I'm just really, again, it was an exciting experience. Everybody's asking us to do it when we're going to do it again. Obviously, we may not wait 100 shows again, but John, before we start the main part of the show here, your thoughts on our 100th show last week?
Gosh, it was a lot of fun, Chuck, and it was such an experiment for us after doing 99 episodes 6 blocks away, through COVID isolation and out. It was just wonderful to take it to the streets, if you will, invite friends of the show and friends of the page, and get a real respectable response. So yeah, I look forward to doing more stuff there. I would like to do our some of our more important candidate forums next year. They're great people.
If they're necessary, yeah.
They are young, scrappy, helpful, concerned people, and I loved it. Good experience.
Absolutely. Well, again, I really just want to thank everybody who attended, and of course our guests. It just really was kind of a once in a couple of years experience, in my opinion, hopefully. But I really couldn't have asked for a better deal. The only thing is, I'm sorry, parking was such a hassle for some people. I know that it was it's Victory Drive. Scad's already done their damage.
Yeah.
So, John, I was just saying before we got started, everybody's been talking about polls the last couple of weeks. And, because we did our live show recording last Monday, it's been about 10 days since you or I got together to talk to everybody here. And so since then, we had a bunch of debates. The governors had a debate. And this is one of the biggest stories in the country right now. And I want to tell everybody, I'm going to put it in the comments here. This website is www.georgiavotes.com. Okay. It's a very, very easy website to access. But I just want to pull these numbers up and kind of start our discussion here, John.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Lead us on.
So these numbers are as of close of business yesterday, meaning through the third day of early voting. statewide in Georgia, 434,567 people have voted. At this point in the 2018 general election, that number was 301,005, representing a total 2022 general election turnout as of the third day of early voting at 44% higher. I mean,
Wow.
that's huge, John.
That's gigantic.
You know?
Yep.
What do you really make of that? You know, do you know what's driving this?
Chuck, I'm going to defer to your.
Oh, come on, give me some bites here at the apple before I take over. I don't want to take over.
Okay. If I remember correctly in our conversation earlier today, the strength is not just in the increase in early voting participation, but it's an older demographic that's taking advantage of early voting. You know, I was watching MSNBC just before we came on, and they were doing a piece about, 10, 15 years ago, it was Republicans that early voted, but they did it, there wasn't early voting, they did it by absentee ballot. So,
right.
So
that's who passed it in Georgia was Republicans in the early 2000s. You were elected official back then.
Yeah. So the only question mark or asterisk in this stuff is the low number of young people that are taking advantage of early voting. But
let's take a look at the data. You know, as much as publicly available out of the people who've casted early ballots statewide so far. Big number here is Black voters representing a 34.3% share of the vote. Right. In 2020 when Biden won and Ossoff and Warnock, Black voters represented, at minimum a 31 to 32%, kind of share of the vote. So this is a very strong number. The female to male ratio is not as high as you'd like it to see, but it's still pretty strong for just the third day of early voting. But as you just said, over here on the right-hand side, this age demographic, 81% of the early vote so far. I can't get it just to highlight just that, but it's 50 and up, 50 right?
Up. Right.
Have you voted already?
No, but I made a date with my buddy Joseph that lives over at Rosa Sharon to drive over to the Civic Center with him on Friday at 1:00.
Sure. So Friday at 1:00 is when you're going to vote. It's just another one. But yeah, you'd like to see the share of young vote about double this number, around 8 to 9%.
Yeah. Well, I feel
this would be big. I'm not in that age group anymore. I'm in this one.
Yeah, you're an old guy.
Not really.
We talked earlier, Chuck, about the high volume of newly registered young voters, and I suggested to you that those first-time voters are probably not absentee or early voters. I think that they may want to have the experience of actually going to a poll and doing it, the traditional way the first time they ever vote. So
okay, so here's this next statistic you're talking about, John. This number right here, 65,113 voters, or 15% of the current early vote total. This is early and absentee, by the way. Total votes accepted. Right. Of the votes, they did not vote in the 2018 general election. So, I mean, obviously it's not a lot of young people, but some people weren't old enough. Most of this represents people who did not live here 4 years ago, right?
Right.
That's what that represents. So that's a big number. If these numbers continue, first off, I think, the Warnock race is over for U.S. Senate. But more importantly, I think, at minimum, you're looking at a runoff for the governor's race.
Wouldn't that be great? Yeah.
Well, it's going to be great for TV stations and, social media, everybody who takes ads, I guess. Right?
Sure. But to keep the Abrams hope alive, I mean, obviously I'd like her to win it outright, but with the independent candidate in there, it probably would go to a runoff.
How many people voted countywide in the Buelterman Ellis race? Do you remember?
I'm gonna say about 120,000.
I think you're right. Maybe 130.
Yeah.
So far, let me get this back up on the screen. For people who are listening to this, the link will be in the podcast description to go see the stuff from GeorgiaVotes.com. This is Chatham County. It's roughly 229,000 people registered to vote, give or take. But, like John says, probably about 130, 135,000 people most vote, right? Countywide. So far, 10,472 people have voted in Chatham, right?
Okay.
16,729 have requested a ballot, but only 1,909 have been returned from those. We look at the demographics of the votes accepted
by county.
This is just in Chatham County.
Right.
Okay. Let me get this up a little bigger on the screen for everybody. 49.2% black, 39.9 other, 8.4 other, 39.9 black. Pretty kind of standard mix. This black voter number will trend up after we have 2 weekends of early voting. So we have Saturday and Sunday early voting this weekend, and Saturday and Sunday early voting next weekend, the next 2 weekends. So you'll see this number jump up after those 2 weekends pass through. But this number, this female number is very good. What are you going to say, John?
Well, I was going to say you're getting ahead there. The female number is 10 points greater. That's significant. But I noticed the Hispanic vote is very low.
Well, the other vote is 8.4. So, I would assume that at least a decent chunk of this number floats between Hispanic and Asian. There might be some of each, in that other. So I'm not sure that those are completely accurate, but this number should be more like 4 or 5 countywide.
Okay. Well, what this tells us is thus far, the largest age group, and it's 80% number is older, 50 plus, and female. Right?
Yeah. So again, 2 things here. Above 50, age 50, between, age 50 and up, you're still looking at this same 80 to 85% trend that was kind of prevalent statewide in the statewide figures, right? But again, you're seeing this, trending female, mixed race, you're seeing those same trends. But the most important number here is exactly like statewide. What you've got is 19% of the votes accepted so far in Chatham County, John, are people who did not vote in 2018. So what you're seeing is an activation of what happens in just general linear time trends, right? It's been 4 years since 2018. People move here, people die, right? Mm-hmm. Those cycles keep churning.
And the issues are possibly different. Chuck, what was the driving issue in 2018? I'll tell you.
Voting rights, right?
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say it's this, the assault on the Capitol and the assault on democracy was not part of the equation in 2018 to the extent that it is today. Also, the economy did not have the pressures of almost double-digit inflation and the gas prices, etc. So I'm wondering if the engagement is higher because the issues resonate or are more critical to those voters this year compared to 2018.
I think the preserved democracy, and of course,
Roe versus
what I think the unpullable issue is Roe versus Wade. So now I want to highlight, one of our local races, John.
Okay.
It's House District 164, longtime incumbent Ron Stevens.
Yep.
Through 3 days of early voting, 2,617 people votes have been cast, including 347 in mail and the rest early in person. Okay.
Yeah.
What I want everybody to understand is that, last time, let me go back to the full districts here. This race had 26,313 votes in 2020,
Right.
2 years ago, on a presidential cycle, right? Which is a very high turnout.
Same candidates. Yep.
Okay. Same two candidates as well. All right.
Yeah.
What you're seeing here is over 10% of that number has voted through just 3 days of early voting, John. Right? That's an astounding percentage. If you live in West Chatham and are connected and hearing this, and you haven't voted, there's a very good chance to beat a 20+ year incumbent. And let's again, look at the trends. Over half of the vote, trending female, right?
Yeah.
A pretty normal turnout amongst race for that type of district. And the most astounding number, again, is this non-voter number, John. Okay. 23.3%, almost 1/4 of the early vote in House District 163 is people who were not here in 2018. Right.
Wow.
If this is a trend that keeps up statewide and locally, I think what you're going to see is a break late for, at the top of the ticket, Stacey and Warnock, but even more locally, because this race was decided by 5 points, right? 52.56, 47.44, a 23% gain of non-voters. If those voters break 70-80% against, incumbent Ron Stevens, I think we might have a major upset on our hands on election night.
Wouldn't that be sweet?
I mean, it would really be something, wouldn't it?
It'd be manna from heaven, man.
I mean, if we come on here and do an election night show at 10 p.m. when the numbers really start getting interesting,
yeah,
and that looks like it's going to happen. I mean, John, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, man. I'm gonna have a field day with it.
Well, yeah, this is the stuff that charges your batteries, Chuck.
Absolutely. So one of the biggest local implications of a high turnout, I think, has got to be this T-Splosh question, right? Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about our opposition? And I'm going to pull up, some of our ads, because we're getting an incredible amount of engagement on these anti-T-Splosh ads, and just talk a little bit about this wide coalition against it.
Well, our coalition against it is amazingly very broad-based. I think Jim Marika said it really well in one of the comments on the page, and that is, he said, "I've never seen so many lefties come out against a sales tax before." I'll take that, but it is traditionally the independent, libertarian, small government folks that drive the anti-sales tax referendums. This year, man, it is your neighbors, it's the guy across the street, it's people that you just wouldn't expect to be part of the coalition. Michelle Solomon's voter guide, which is very popular and very well done, recommends a no vote on it. We have, as of the first day of early voting, as of Monday, Chuck, we've made just short of 38,000 impressions between our three messages, all no vote on T-Splost.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up this one, the one with the redlining here in a second.
Yeah.
This one alone has almost 30,000. Go ahead.
Well, it's just a strong set of circumstantial facts that say these divergent groups are now aligning, and why the opposition? I got to say, Chuck, it's partially because we're in this bad economy, uh, and headed, to be an even worse economy with inflation. No relief in sight. Putin's not letting off on the Ukraine. The prime minister's, only good for 10 days. Um, I think people are just, it's the wrong damn time just to ask people to open their wallets and pay for projects. So,
Yeah, this red line, post of kind of fact checking all of the projects on here. I mean, this thing's been shared 50 times, in 7 days. It's just, again, there's just a wide variety. And again, it's not just, liberal firebrands or progressive
that's
firebrands,
my
like
point.
whoever you want to call it. You got leaders of the GOP, people who are just really sick and tired. And look, it's your neighbors. I mean, look at some of these comments, John.
Yeah.
Right? Read some of these.
Okay. This is George M. Says being a resident and driving on these deplorable roadways is sickening. I'm not being duped again with government ineptitude. Very interesting comment, Chuck, here, because on one hand, he says the streets are deplorable, which would suggest that this guy would probably vote to get them
Sure,
fixed. Yet,
but they understand that these governments aren't capable.
exactly. So it's an incompetency factor of prior. I think the arena is the biggest stunning example.
Broughton.
Thank you, Broughton Street. People are cumulatively seeing that Splost is a lot of it's wasted. A lot of it doesn't come out very well done. All of it's behind schedule. So let's just call it sales tax fatigue.
Right. We are tired of Splost. Ended already, says Verna.
Short and
Right.
sweet.
I love it.
Love it.
Here's another one from Joan. It's a big scam for a slush fund. We need road maintenance and resurfacing 100 times more than all those other quote unquote special projects that should be paid for by other means. Another good theme coming up in these comments from your neighbors, right? The Benton Boulevard project, of course, needs doing, but it should have been paid for by impact fees from all that construction that's been done out there the last 10 years, which made that project necessary.
Yeah, it would have already been done if they'd had impact fees, which were legal since 1990, and they didn't, to favor the builders and developers.
Jasmine Polly says President Street Bridge contribution. So to me, that still sounds like it's not fully funded. I ask because a lot of folks want to vote yes. Because of that specific item, it might be worth to dig deeper and expose that. So this is a great comment. Jasmine Polly, former candidate for 8th District on the West Side. This is specifically for like island voters. There's a ton of people who live on the islands that are kind of theoretically want to support this because there's this quote unquote contribution to President Street Bridge, which would make their commute a lot easier, especially around the railroad tracks. And, based on if past this prologue, how can you be sure that contribution is going to be enough to get it done?
Well, you know what Jasmine is scratching the surface on, which is worthy of a deeper, longer discussion in another show. If SPLOST projects were broken into categories on the ballot and we voted
The ballot's already long enough. Ugh.
Well,
I understand the sentiment, though.
Yeah, I mean, put 4 or 5 categories and lump some projects together, and the top 2 or top 3 go forward, and the others don't. People don't like the mixing, Chuck, of disparate things like they're sneaking canal district.
Sounds like how DC works. No, I get it, man. I get
So
it.
they just got to be smarter. Okay, Bruce P says, I can't see paying more in taxes when they can't even explain where it's going. Thank you, Bruce. Yasmin, I am still tired of E-Splost, Splost, and the T-Splost. Okay, there's the fatigue thing I mentioned, Chuck.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into this in just a second. With a deep dive on a big issue that's coming. But the last comment from Sharon, an unequivocal no. Our elected officials need to develop a budget and go by it. I don't have anyone to call for slush money when I want to do something in my budget. And that is, just a great reference to, somebody who is going to be a main character in the next season of Better Savannah. We really went from Al Scott to Chester Ellis, John. I know we kind of were responsible for ending that a little bit, but man.
Well, listen, we went from Woodrow Wilson to Harding. I'm just being historically silly here. We went from Herbert Hoover to Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm just saying. So, Kevin Goff, major Republican player, T-Splost, $500 million slush fund, snake oil for what ails Savannah. Don't be a sucker. Vote against the T-Splost, y'all.
Yep.
We have to send a message to the governments that have failed us that, we're not going to trust you with more of our money, especially during this time of such uncertainty. And what I mean by that is that we are, so, we're 75 days away from the end of the year. Okay.
Right.
And way back, you can go back to episode 91, a couple months ago, and privately, I think going back to June, I'd say, kind of been warning everybody about these loss negotiations. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't like to be right about everything. It's not like this is like enjoyable, but I kind of called this, John,
Yeah, you did. I understood it, but I didn't want to believe it. I held out that they'll find a middle ground, and lo and behold, there is no middle ground yet. So, why don't you why don't we explain without the slide that the sales tax continuum right now is 7 cents on every dollar. The first 4 cents, we don't see any of it. It goes to the state of Georgia, goes to Atlanta. The 5th penny is lost, which stands for local option sales tax. The 6th penny is splost, and that builds roads, drainage, bridges, libraries, police precincts, etc. The 7th penny is E-Splost, which stands for education. And that is money that goes in just to the school district for new school construction, computers, capital projects.
Bus purchases.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Let me loop back around to the 5th penny lost so that people don't get confused. Lost, hundreds of millions of dollars to the county and the cities can be put into the general fund. And that is the most critical budget fund. The other fund is the capital fund, which is adequately funded and overly funded, really. But general fund is how we pay our employees, how we pay our light bills, and our everyday running of a household or a government is the general fund. The building projects are the capital fund. So with Lost in place, we're able to keep property taxes lower than they would be if we did not have Lost.
Of course.
Turn it over to you, Chuck.
Well, first off, when the law for Lost was designed, it was designed, to be in a local offset to property taxation, and in these inflationary times, right? One of the biggest pain points is rent inflation and home pricing inflation, right?
Right.
So what we're about to break down for you guys is kind of a series of what this nuclear bomb exploding would look like. I mean, John, at one point, I think you called it,
Cuban
Missile Crisis kind of level of taxation changes in Savannah. So again, John just broke it down for those listening in podcasts. For those looking at the video, on your screen is the current breakdown. Again, state gets 4. The loss that we're going to talk about is the 5th. SPLOST that we voted on in 2019 is the 6th. E-SPLOST that we voted on in 2021 is the 7th. If T-SPLOST passes, we will be planning for 8 pending the loss negotiations, which is what we're about to talk. Again, like John just said, it's the only penny of sales tax that's collected locally allowed for maintenance and operations, aka the general fund. Okay. If negotiations fail, Chatham County would lose $24 million a year of this revenue. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
How do you make that up?
In order to increase that, in order to cover that without, they probably don't need all of that money back. They probably need 20 to 21 of it back.
Let's just keep it simple. Straight line. They lose
2 to 3 mils.
Yes.
Okay. That's going to be assessed on property countywide, including inside the city of Savannah, right? Because Savannians are Chatham County taxpayers.
Right.
I'm sure you've always loved, to say that, right, John?
Yep.
I got them out of order. Savannah will lose $57 million a year in general fund revenue.
Wow.
This would require a millage rate increase, a tax rate increase of anywhere between 6 and 11 mils, depending on what plan they come up with to adjust to the revenue shock of losing 57 million. So just taking kind of average in the middle, right? The current total millage rate, city, county, school board, CAT, is 44.3, right? Taken in the middle between 6 and 11, if we get roughly an 8.7 mil increase in total, that'll take us to 53 mils.
Now that's combined.
That's a combined city county tax rate. Okay. This could double taxes on owner occupied homes, or at least increase them, 30% or so. Right. On the rent side for non-Stevens Day property, you're looking at dramatic rent increases for the 3rd straight year coming out of COVID.
These are apartments. These are studio apartments. These are rental inventory that cannot be Stevens Day protected.
All right. So just some brass tacks, because, I've been following this issue for a while, guys. Like I said, I'm very concerned about this because it's a dramatic shock to the housing market at a time it can least afford it. So to keep things simple, what we're looking at here is the effect of this policy failure, because the lost negotiations, as we're going to talk about in a second, do not seem to be going well. And if this fails in December, we're going to see dramatic changes in December and January on tax policy. So if you own your own home and you have Stevens Day, you're locked in at, let's say, an assessed value of $100,000 with your homestead exemption and Stevens Day filed.
Which
your
would
total,
be
go ahead.
Chuck, how much of a fair market value? Because I think people need.
Okay, so before we get here, John, explain the difference between fair market value and assessment value.
Okay. The fair market value is what the Board of Assessors feels the retail value of your house is based on comparable sales from the year before. So the tax formula in Georgia is the millage rate is applied to 40% of that fair market value.
And if you are a homeowner that locked in Stevens Day, it's about when you locked in that fair market value with the assessed value. And inside the city of Savannah, they have what's called, a chain CPI formula where your value can never increase more than, basically the inflation rate, which is, of course, all-time high this year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So fair market value, retail value is one thing. We get taxed on 40% of that fair market value. So that's called the assessed value. And I just wanted to make that clear because we're using $100,000 as a.
And so the assessed value is what the millage rate gets applied to for your tax bill. So with a owner-occupied home, you're a homeowner, you have a mortgage, right? Your total property tax bill somewhere in the ballpark of around, $3,875, right? Okay, you're talking about $300 a month in property tax bills paid out between the city, county, Chatham Area Transit, and the school board. The school board being the largest single share of that property tax bill. Okay, if the new millage rate of 53 is applied to that valuation, that even if it's just the valuation stays the same, John, right? You're talking about a tax bill of $5,025 per month, which effectively represents a $1,200 increase or $100 per month on a mortgage. It's a 29 to 30% increase in the total rate of property taxes. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a big deal. If you're already paying a $2,100 mortgage payment or a $1,900 mortgage payment or a $1,600 mortgage payment, you can expect your mortgage to go up $100 per month in the following 6 to 12 months because of this increase in property taxes, right? Now, if you're not, about 40, 41, 42% of people own their own home here in Savannah. So for the majority of us who rent, and for all business people who rent property, business property, right? Those valuations on assessed and fair market value change much more dramatically from year to year. Okay. So again, for sake of example, on a $100,000 assessed valued property from this past year, with an assessment change of 20% of positive, in line with home values going up over 20% in Chatham County this past year, John.
Comparable sales. Yep.
So what we're doing is you take the old millage rate of 43 at $100,000 valuation with the tax bill of 4430 with no homestead exemption, right? And now you're comparing that to the new assessment of 120,000, 20% increase at 53 mills. You're talking about a tax bill of $6,360, or roughly a $2,000 increase, so about $200 per month more in property taxes. On that scenario, that represents a 44% increase in overall property taxation in 1 year. So if you're renting of that property, right, you at a minimum, you should expect that rent to go up $200 per month.
10, 15, 20%. Sure.
Minimum.
Yeah.
I
hope people understand how critically dire the absence of loss. If Chester and Van can't come to terms and lost expires and is no longer legally able to be collected, yes, our sales tax will go down by 1 penny, but your property taxes could, go up 20 to 40%.
Absolutely.
That's not tenable. That's not manageable. There aren't a lot of workarounds to the average family who's getting, you can't save money anymore because inflation has kind of whacked that. So just imagine your mortgage payment going up, $200 to $400 a month, or your rent going up $100 to $150 a month.
So when we connect this back to T-Splosh, is that, best case scenario, T-Splosh fails because everybody's getting behind that, and sales tax goes down by 1%, which means on average a family might save $200 to $300 per year if loss goes away, right? A family of 4 would save maybe $350 a year max, or maybe slightly more if they spend more money, but again, average family.
All relative.
We're talking about a rent increase, of something like $2,000 to $3,000, per year. So it's a horrible exchange, in times that we just cannot afford it. It is a ridiculous policy that will result in complete acceleration of gentrification.
We'll have more gentrification in the first year or two after loss goes away than a decade of SCAD construction and gentrification. It's that toxic, powerful, that significant.
Absolutely. And again, let me pull up the last slide. Lost is not on the ballot. T-Splosh is. We want you to vote against T-Splosh to send a message.
Yeah.
These 6 men on the screen, for those listening to the podcast, the last slide on these slides, these 6 men are the sole responsibility of loss negotiation is the responsibility of City Manager Savannah J. Melder, Mayor Van Johnson, 4th District Alderman Nick Palumbo, Chairman of the Board of Commissioners, Chairman Chester Ellis, 6th District Commissioner Aaron Whiteley, and Interim County Manager Michael Cagle.
Right.
Yep. Right. So this is not something that we've been able to have a transparent view. It's not a transparent process. I have been warning, like John said, again, I'm not trying to take any credit for this. It's not something to take credit for. This is a horrible, again, it's like finding a nuclear bomb in the Airbnb you're staying in. Yeah. And now there's a 5-minute clock on it. Like, we need to disarm this thing. Okay. So, I have been saying about this for a while. And then, lately I, and a lot of other people we're close with, of course, have been attending, more and more community meeting events. Right.
Right.
And so, Tuesday of this week, was that what it was, John?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait a minute. What's
today's Thursday. It was 2 nights ago. You went to DNA.
Tuesday. Yeah.
So Tuesday of this week, John, you attended the Downtown Neighborhood Association monthly meeting, of which you're a member.
Correct.
Long time standing, good standing member, right?
Yep.
Okay. So, there was a plethora of things talked about. And if you want to touch on any of the other subjects, that's fine. But, I want to get to kind of the comments that were made, because what happened on Tuesday night and our discussions afterwards in the last 48 hours has really led us to kind of push for this loss to get, solidified ASAP. Tell us a little bit about it.
Okay. The purpose of the DNA, Downtown Neighborhood Association meeting, was to talk about public safety and homelessness downtown. And it was a good discussion. Jay Melder, the city manager, and Jen Darcy from the Homeless Authority were the key speakers. At the end of their prepared remarks, they took questions from the audience. And I was sitting up in the back, and somebody down in front on the opposite side asked the city manager, what's going on with the lost negotiations on getting that renewed between the city and the county? And Jay Melder said essentially, first of all, they're not going well. There's no progress. They're at a standstill, and the clock is running. He went on to essentially kind of give a wonky philosophical poli-sci comment that says, look, I'm just the city manager. My job is to manage the production and the responsibilities of the city of Savannah, and I need revenue to do that. That's what fuels my responsibility. And quite frankly, as city manager, it doesn't matter to me if the revenue comes from property taxes or sales tax, just as long as the revenue comes in. And he said, if this community wants to pay less in sales tax, forget the lost penny goes away, and pay more in property taxes, that's their decision. He was fine with that as long as the revenue stream that he needed to conduct operations in his capacity as city manager, as long as that revenue materialized, he didn't have really a dog in the fight. Which to me, because I overthink stuff, I said, this guy is creating a new foundation or rationale or explanation. If these lost negotiations fail and loss goes away, this is what they're going to turn to. This is going to be the justification or explanation, or my favorite word, the equivocation of the failure to come to terms between Chester and Van.
I'm a professional.
That's what everybody keeps saying. I'm just a professional. Everybody keeps saying that to me. I'm just a professional.
Great.
That's it. You know what I mean? Like I'm just a professional. Like, yeah. I'm just the guy who will get it done. So
I'm just a mechanic.
I think the quote that you said to me and others talking about this was, if this community decides
yes,
that we no longer want to tax ourselves with sales tax for maintenance and operation, I will get it done with property taxes and maybe some cuts and stuff. And again, this is from the same city manager who is on this list.
Yeah, he is.
He is said community.
Listen, the dynamic egos of Chester Ellis and Van Johnson against the passive, introvertive nature of Jay Melder, he is not going to get in between two rampaging elephants. Okay, he's just out of his league. Plus, he's new. So I just thought, you're really starting to lay down a track here to explain away the fact that the millage rate has to increase, but you're going to save some tax money. Well, what Chuck just ran down for you is it's not a little tiny millage increase. It's a gigantic one. It's 40, 50, 60% more in property taxes to make up for that lost revenue. So,
or as I see Rebecca in the comments here, which city county programs will get gutted first? Because that's the inverse. I mean, you and I have said we don't believe it'll be entirely just replaced by property taxes. There will be cuts in government spending locally. The question is where, right? Is it going to be, the EOAs and the family promises and the rape crisis centers? Are they going to lose funding, or are we going to cut? Are we going to cut some of the funding to Visit Savannah? You see where we go with this. This type of issue spawns so much more of issues that ultimately, when lost ends, this is what it's going to look like, John. It's a huge explosion of people leaving.
Chuck, we should tell our viewers that while monitoring this blip on our radar called Lost, you have pretty much steadfastly said, because of the dynamics of the egos, there's not going to be a deal. This thing will explode, just like that image. I have been more sober about it, and I see a compromise with the city giving up some money to the county to pay off this extortion move by Chester Ellis.
Okay, so let's start with just some reportable facts.
Well,
okay?
Are we going to talk about what's being said to the Black community?
No, I do. We're going to get to that. That's next. We're going to get to that. But before we get there, let's talk about just reportable facts, okay? Chester Ellis's public position is that he wants 50% of the lost revenue to go to the county. Right now, the county gets 23%. So that is a 112% increase in share. It's more than doubling. It is ridiculous. It's totally insane. Now, before we go any further, privately and publicly, John, you and I will admit that, look, the county going from, say, 23 to 27, 4% more, given some of the challenges the county faces and the services we Savannahans do use at the county, there's some room for negotiation, obviously. But 5% and 28% are so far away from each other in terms of numbers. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. This is, we want all of the West Bank and the Golan Heights. This isn't. We're gonna.
Oof. Tough comparison there, buddy.
Yeah. Well.
It is true though.
Well, I'm just talking about the level of contention between the negotiators is reminiscent of fucking Palestine and Israel.
Okay, next major reportable fact. Okay, right before the negotiations ended the pre-mediation and arbitration phase, this county government of this county, Chatham County, fired its county manager right at the negotiations got to their most critical point.
We have no idea why.
He is on paid leave, and they have not come to an agreement on a severance agreement to fire him. Okay, that's public fact. These are just facts. Okay, this is not my opinion. These are reportable facts.
Right.
Okay, the mayor has largely tried to avoid the subject.
He's been in Washington.
I'm getting there. The mayor has been in Washington 5 or 6 times in as many months. In the last 5 or 6 months, been in Washington a ton, right? Yeah. So, he seems more interested in things outside of Savannah at the moment. And the couple of times I've seen him get asked about this at the podium, his line has been the exact same as Jay Melder's line, the city manager, was one night this week. Okay. So after Tuesday night, and we're going to get into this part, John, now, right? After Tuesday night, we started connecting with, obviously the elected officials that will listen to us, right?
Yep.
Okay. So again, remind everybody, you went to the Downtown Neighborhood Association on Tuesday night, October 18th. That was 2 nights ago from this recording. Okay. Right. And, so yesterday, we connect with Alderwoman Kesha Gibson-Carter, because of course, we just had her on our 100th show last week. And this is a explosive policy subject that is critical,
Yep.
And she gets it, right? So in talking to her, John, we learned that on Monday evening, October the 17th, 3 nights ago from this recording, the city manager was at the Tatumville Community Association, And so this meeting was basically led by, 5th District Alderwoman, Mayor Pro Tem, Shabazz, and Kesha was, up there with her. So, during the question and answer portion, we learned that Alderwoman Gibson-Carter pressed the city manager on this very subject. And his answer was similar to Van's. And it's the negotiations are underway. The chairman is here in the audience. The mayor is here. Those negotiations will continue until we get a deal, basically, right? So there was this dramatic underplaying of this critical explosive policy issue to this crowd. And then 24 hours later, it seems that the city manager is kind of giving the Downtown Neighborhood Association kind of the better inside information for them to plan.
It's not necessarily conflicting information. It's the depth of the information. And the African American Neighborhood Association meeting is getting the most base level simplistic explanation, and the Downtown Neighborhood Association gets almost a 5-minute philosophical poli-sci explanation of, well, listen, if this community wants to pay more in property tax and less in sales tax, I'm okay with that.
Right.
So it's omission and lack of consistency in terms of messaging that I think we have a problem, as does Pastor Small, as does ATR, as does the people that we know that are in office.
So, again, guys, I hope that you'll share this video, the breakdown of what this means for people who live here. A 30 to 44% property tax increase in these times. I mean, honestly, John,
Chuck,
the elections are going to be wild next year. I can't even fathom how angry everybody's going to be in the next 6 months.
Well, just imagine, use your imagination, and the very same people that for the last 6 months have been saying, we rolled the millage rate back so much that it's the lowest since 1987. Those very same people are going to have to come back and say, ooh, sorry, we now have to give you the largest millage increase in the history of the city of Savannah.
Absolutely.
Untenable reversal.
So, in figuring out the math, because because I've been so interested in this, and once we kind of figured out that, again, at a very minimum, the city manager was previewing this policy failure to one group over the other. I want as much information about this out as possible. We got to warn everybody. And remember, these 6 men, Jay Milder, Van Johnson, Nick Palumbo, Chester Ellis, A. Wiley, Michael Kegler, elected officials and city and county managers, are the ones responsible for these negotiations. We're going to have a press conference with, elected officials from the city, us at Better Savannah, Pastor Leonard Small from Unity in the Community Political Action Committee, ATR, Julius Hall. We'll have it live streamed, but it's going to be next Tuesday. We're gonna get this issue pointed. Now, we are going to ask everybody again to vote against T-Splosh to send this message. But we need people to understand the implications of things beyond the ballot right now in this critical time, right?
Yeah, well, to simplify it, T-Splosh bad, lost good. Tuesday, we're going to do our thing and meet our responsibility to forecast and ring the town bell and say, you need to understand how significant this is. And that's all we can do, Chuck. But I think thus far we've done a good job of it. And credit to you for spotting this 6-7 months ago, because you were absolutely right. I hope they come to a compromise. But if they don't, man, you nailed it right on the head.
Well, where I'm at is we've got to push them to get to a deal. And if we push them the next 6 weeks and they fail, and this city council presides over the largest property tax increase in history, I won't feel guilty about it because we did our part to try and prevent it. But this is, if you think this city council and this mayor has failed, or you're unhappy with this chairman, I mean, this will be one of the largest political miscalculations in the history of Savannah, Georgia. And that is saying quite a lot, John.
Yeah, interesting times we're living in, Chuck.
Absolutely. So come on down next Tuesday. We're going to get the word out, put an event together.
County Courthouse, right
square, on the county courthouse side, not the federal courthouse side. Come on down and join us, and, we'll report back. I don't know if we'll have a show next week because we're definitely going to some another event next Thursday, but we'll be back before the election because the election is November 8th. So we'll definitely have another show before the election. And then, John, at some point, I think we'll either for members only or maybe for the public too. We might get on at around 10 o'clock when some real numbers start coming in on these elections.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Well,
we've done our job.
Appreciate the time. I'm doing the best. We're doing the best we can.
Yeah, it's complicated.
It's a very complex policy issue to understand that because this certificate for this local option sales tax has been previously renewed by the county commission 10 years ago and the cities 10 years ago, it doesn't have to go back before the voters. But if they don't renew it before next year, we will lose it and we will just face the most catastrophic, thing ever.
That's an important dimension that we didn't mention earlier. I'm glad you just brought it up. And that is our followers need to understand that the lost negotiations cover a 10-year, an entire decade of splits and agreements.
It's $1 billion over 10 years, guys. Okay, it's an unbelievable amount of money. We got two men playing chicken with us over this, and the uncertainty is there. So we'll be sure to report back on the progress in the coming days. But check out, we'll be live on our page next Tuesday morning. But come on down to Right Square if you want to join us. We'll talk to you guys soon.
I appreciate our tourism community. I appreciate our hoteliers.
I'm not exactly sure about what it is. I'm not exactly sure why it is. But there has been a proliferation of homeless people, roofless neighbors in our streets, in our squares, throughout our community.
Don't you think it's time for the city of Savannah to have an honest tourism management plan? Let scabs start paying its fair share? And the hospitality industry needs to increase its wages? The impacts of new growth should not cost residents. All local elected officials on council and commission should have term limits. We're working hard to accomplish these policies. We need your help. Please contribute whatever you can, $5, $10, or $20, by going to bettersavannah.org. Donate. Thank you.